Hey there, folks. Sarah Rusnak with sararusnakyoga.com. And I am bringing you today a book and tea review. And the book review is on two different books by one of my favorite authors, Katy Bowman, who's a biomechanist. Um, so both of these books are about movement and how to get more movement in your life and why movement is really important. And one is about the aging body and our elders and how your movement capabilities can actually expand if you start now, versus a lot of the conditioning and thought that we're taught, which is like, oh, we move less and we have to move less to protect our bodies and we have to be careful of falling. And so she really breaks down some things in her book Dynamic Aging that is very helpful for the aging bodies. And then the other book is really great for parents and how to get our kids moving more and how to move more with our children. So I wish I had had that book when my kids were young, even though I think we did pretty good. Okay, so book review on two different books and then a tea review. And I'm going to grab my little cup of tea right here and take a sip. So maybe you want to grab a cup of tea and sit down and enjoy this book review and tea review with me. So starting with the tea part, and then I'll get to the main feature, the books. You may or may not know that I teach health coaching courses about Ayurveda, which Ayurveda is yoga's sister science. It's all about diet and lifestyle that is best for our human physiology, but it also teaches us as individuals how to really own our own constitution, learn about it, learn about our physiology, and then from that place be able to make informed decisions about how to become our best caregiver. And not that that doesn't mean that we can't use allopathic medicine or have caregivers and doctors who know way more than we do. But what it means is that we can go into those relationships with a sense of advocacy for ourselves, with a sense of strength and empowerment that, like, I do know what's good for me and I do know about my body. So with teas, one thing about Ayurveda is it teaches us to eat with the seasons and eat foods that are good for our body in different seasons. And it teaches that there's a reason we eat one way in the summer and another way in the winter and another way in the fall and another way in the spring. So it has to do with tastes and it has to do with our digestive system. And we want to keep the digestive system so that it's running clean. Ayurveda believes that all disease starts in the digestive system. In allopathic and Western medicine these days, it's becoming more and more common knowledge that a lot of people are suffering from different kinds of inflammation, and that inflammation in the body is what leads to disease. Well, inflammation in the body a lot of the times has to do with the integrity of the gut lining, digestion, right? So we can do things, we can eat things, we can drink things that actually break down the integrity of the gut, and then we can do things that actually heal it and help to keep that mucosal lining doing what it needs to do. So in summer, we want to eat in a way that promotes cooling in the body. And in winter, we want to eat and drink in a way that promotes warmth in the body. So chai tea, for example, and I see this is backwards here, but yogi teas and chai tea, all the spices in there are warming, great for fall and winter. Not so great for summer. However, here we are, we're still in late spring where I am and at the time that I'm filming this, and it's actually a cooler day. So I might be able to, depending on my constitution and what's going on in my body, I might be able to get away with some chai tea or still eating some ginger and some spicy things that are more warming to the body. But once we get into summer, I want to be consuming things that are cooling for the body. And actually, the flavor of sweet is cooling for the body in summer. So all those fresh fruits are great. Fresh, juicy fruits that are abundant in the summer. That's nature saying, like, here, have this. So this tea right here, Tulsi Sweet Rose. So the Tulsi plant is a kind of basil. It's good for the kidneys. Summer and a lot of heat can be hard on the kidneys, so good for it there. And then the rose part, rose is naturally cooling for the body. So you can spritz yourself with rose water in the summer to help from getting overheated. And then rose teas are also cooling. Mint tea is cooling. Lime juice is cooling. Fennel is a cooling herb. So yes, choosing teas for the season. And another thing, like Ayurveda, big no-no on drinking iced beverages. I know a lot of people, they don't want to give up their iced beverages, but it's hard on the digestive system. So that's why Ayurveda suggests room temperature or warm fluids when we are drinking. And you can get away in summer with a little bit of cooler, some iced beverages here and there. But in general, it's just not good to be drinking a lot of really cold things, according to Ayurveda. So I've got a nice cup of room temperature Tulsi rose tea, maybe making sun tea with mint in it, and a squeeze of lime. Refreshing, cooling, good for summer. Okay, so we've got our teas, and now moving on to our books. So as I was saying, Katy Bowman is a biomechanist, and I have been following her for probably 5 years, and the woman is very prolific. She has like 5, 6 books. I've gotten them all and read them all. It's just fascinating. Her work with the body has really helped me learn a lot about anatomy and helped me to really rearrange my life in a way that's better for my body. So that would be my hope for you with this, is that you can find some ways to move differently and slightly adjust your day-to-day living that's actually very good for your body, good for your joints, good for your muscles. For example, one thing that Katy talks about is why sitting on the floor is better for us than sitting in a chair. I'm sitting on the floor right now. So part of that is it takes a greater range of motion to get down to the floor. And if we consistently just keep doing less and less and taking away our opportunity to get more range of motion, we will lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. Katy talks about how for hundreds of thousands of years, our DNA and our bodies formed as human beings, living close to the land, living close to nature, without houses, without comforts, without furniture. And so our bodies were designed, we were more nomadic, we hunted and gathered, and that right there, hunting, gathering, putting clothes on our body, creating and collecting our food, building our shelters, carrying and raising our young, all of those things move the body in certain ways. And as we became more civilized and developed, we outsourced our movement. So we moved less and less in the ways that our bodies were designed to move, and started moving in more sedentary ways. Like if you look at what we're doing, what a lot of us are doing now, sitting down for a lot of hours out of the day. And even if you're an active person and you exercise, if you look at the number of hours in a day that you're inactive compared with the amount of hours in a day that you're exercising, we're largely much more sedentary. So something that Katy talks about is stacking your life and just incorporating more functional movement into day-to-day living, and that can be just as good and in sometimes better than exercise, like going to exercise at the gym. So fascinating body of work. I'm going to start with the Grow Wild, which is all about children and movement, and parents and children and movement. And then she also talks about allo parents, which are the people who help the parents, our extended community, whether that's grandparents or aunties and uncles or friends who love the children and take care of them too. Because we all know that parents they're pretty strapped and stressed. So any help that we can extend to them within the community when we have time is a good thing. And if we're taking those kids under our wings for an hour or 2 hours a week, and taking them to places where they can move in nature or on the playground, and we're getting some of that too, it's a win-win. So Grow Wild, one of the things she first talks about is the stacking your life piece. That we can combine activities to actually get more functional movement in our life. And I love the way she did this in this book, because she really breaks things down in a simple way so that we can get and digest and retain her message and bring it into our day-to-day life. So she talks about containers, and it definitely is a quote because it's not the literal translation of container. So the culture container, meaning what kind of society are we living in? What kind of culture are we living in? The clothing container, what kind of clothing are we wearing, and how is our clothing inhibiting our movement, including our shoes? She's a big proponent of minimal footwear, and why we need to take care of our feet and how incredibly important that is when it comes to the rest of our physiology. The cooking container, we can change certain things about the way we cook and what we cook and how we gather our food to get more movement in our lives. The home container, how we arrange our houses, what kind of furniture we have, and she's a proponent of sitting on the floor, making your table smaller. If you're someone who works from home and works at a desk, changing your movement. Maybe sometimes you're standing, sometimes you're sitting on the floor with your desk right in front of you. So all these different ways that we can change our home environment that are going to get us more of this functional type movement. The learning container, the activities container, the celebration container. I love this one because kids, there, I just nannied some children for the last school year, and it was like one holiday to the next. What was the next holiday that they could be excited about? And their birthdays, three of them I nannied in this 9 months, and they all had a birthday, and they were so thrilled about their birthdays and St. Patrick's Day and Christmas and Valentine's Day and Easter, right? So these celebrations, we can switch the way we have celebrations with our children in a way to bring in more education, more interaction, more movement, and maybe less sugar, less balloons, less garbage. Right? So if you think about the way that celebrations are take place, the common cultural way that celebrations are taking place these days, you can notice that there's probably opportunities to change some of that. And if some of that could be done in a way that actually benefits our health and benefits the child's mindset and benefits the child in their future for how they go through life and how their attitudes towards celebration as they come into adulthood and how they end up raising their own kids, right? So wonderful book that gets parents and kids moving together. Lots of ideas for how to move more together, and lots of ideas for how to appreciate nature and get children taking advantage of nature and having an appreciation for nature. And of course, that can come into, whatever your attitude is about environmental awareness, global climate change, wherever you lie on that spectrum of care and appreciation for the planet, you can impart those things in your kids by spending time in nature and interacting with nature. And I live in a place that's abundant with nature. It's right outside our door. It's there all the time. It's a little bit harder for folks who are in a city, but still absolutely possible. And so this spending time in nature and spending time, I'll just read a little excerpt from this book here about what is nature exactly. Humans have defined nature as everything in the universe except humans and human-made stuff. But really, humans and human-made stuff are part of nature, just as beavers and beaver-made stuff are. The reasons we've recently found ourselves unable to deal with nature and its elements is probably that we've started thinking we don't belong in it. Even though everything is nature, when we talk nature, we typically conjure up an area or space that looks like what's often found in green spaces like wilderness parks and backyards. So in this book, I too will use that more commonly held definition. Wilderness is the least disrupted, most intact version of nature we have on the planet. But you can find some elements of nature everywhere, even in areas that feel particularly nature-less. I've created a list of nature elements to help you see which are available to you right now in your own home and community. She goes on to list varied temperature, natural light, textured surfaces to touch or walk upon versus all smooth and even surfaces like pavement or sidewalks, varied terrain, slopes versus flat, non-human animals. What other animals are sharing our spaces, either indoors or outdoors? Nature's artifacts, feathers, bones, shells, rocks, sounds. Can you hear the birds chirping, the wind, the bugs, plants, inside and outside? How much plant life do you see? Phytochemicals in the air, chemicals given off by plants, smells, moisture, wind, dirt, bacteria, the moon, daytime and night viewing, distance to look or walk. She says, this list is not complete. I have left out many elements, including non-tangible elements of nature like hunger and behaviors like communication. But starting with this list, you should be able to quickly tune into the vitamin nature, she calls it, that is always surrounding us and always available for stacking, that thing of stacking it into our life. So this book gives a beautiful appreciation for nature, appreciation for being part of nature, and it really gives a lot of opportunities for adults to interact with children and teaching ourselves as adults and the children at the same time to be good stewards of the land and of our bodies. So, can't recommend that book enough. And it's also really good for your kids' health and your health too, and the health of your bodies, the overall health of your bodies. All right, which leads me to the second book, Dynamic Aging. Dynamic Aging, simple exercises for whole body mobility. 30 plus moves to build pain-free feet, better balance, and confident movement. So if we didn't grow up with the kind of information that was in the last book, and we didn't learn to prioritize our movement and functional movement and movement-based lifestyle versus sedentary-based lifestyle, we might find ourselves at, late 20s, early 30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, with bodies that are not moving well. With joints that need to get replaced, with conditions in the feet, with conditions in the digestive system and the organs. Well, Katy says that all of that, what if the idea that all the misalignments, all disease is perhaps connected to the lack of movement and the lack of nature. So vitamin movement, vitamin nature. And how, so this book is coming from the place of you've got a body, an older body that's already starting to be a little bit broken, a little bit limited. And how do we start and regain some of that in a safe way that builds confidence? And how do we retrain our mind? I work with a lot of women in an older age group, and the beliefs that we're taught about aging are not always a benefit. Like, okay, yes, maybe it is good it's good to know that there's mental decline as we age so that we can proactively take that on. But is it good to just take for granted that our mind is going to decline as we age and to repeat that to ourselves and to expect it in our life? Is that a good thing? It's not for me. Is it good to believe that you lose your balance and you have more pain as you age and you just get stiff? It's not for me to just take that for granted. Is it true? Maybe, maybe some of those things are true, but to the degree which I buy into it and just go along with that flow, that's where there's a lot of movement to, change quality of life in there. Balance is a big one. I don't believe that an elderly person as they age, they just lose balance. I think it has to do with not challenging the brain to stay connected to the body, not challenging our spatial awareness, our movement, diversity of terrain, right? And when we just do less and less and less and less, isn't it obvious that balance is going to go away? Yes. So I think, we can do a lot about this. I teach movement classes. I have a mindful movement membership. I teach live classes, like 4 live classes per week, and then there's recorded videos that you can access. And I incorporate a lot of Katy's work into what I teach, as well as yoga and some other primal movement influences. That thing of like, how is our physiology originally designed to move, and how do we do more of that, and how do we keep doing that, and how do we take that movement out into the woods and move around on trails and balance on logs and step over logs and squat down to see the plants. All those things are like so good for our physiology. So I teach these things. I've learned a lot from Katy for my own body, but also for my clients. And so this book here can be used as a manual. You could get this book and start to go through it and start to bring in some exercises that you do on a daily, weekly basis, and it will change the quality of your body and the quality of your joints. So reading the chapters here, your feet are your foundation. So again, she's a big proponent of minimal footwear. And easing out of the heavily constructed and even high-heeled footwear. And in some cases, easing away from orthotics, but maybe in some cases that someone's been wearing orthotics for such a long time, they'll never get to not wearing orthotics, but they might be able to pull back a little bit. I also worked as a massage therapist for a lot of years. I saw a lot of feet that were really, it's like the foot becomes atrophied. It's in a foot, shoes that are like casts. So the foot is like, it's not asked to do everything that a foot can do, move in many different ways. It's held really still. And, so the bones get closer together. Some people get corns or bunions, toes cross over one another. And then we wonder why we don't have balance, right? Because our feet touch the earth. So lots of exercises in here about how to get space into the toes, how to get the foot bones individuating, and how to begin to practice walking in your house without shoes on and on uneven surfaces. Chapter 2, balance, stability, and getting over the fear of falling. Chapter 3, super strong hips and single leg balance. Chapter 4, walking. Katy's also a big proponent of walking. Of course, if you're older and you're just getting started to get your body back, you're not going to start out with a ton of walking. But for myself, at 48 years old, I can take on some of what Katy's saying and really take it to heart. She recommends a lot of walking, putting a lot of miles in. I love walking. I don't always make the time for it. I want to more and more. So long distance walking, really good for our bodies. So then here's where this like stacking our life comes in. Now, if we're walking long miles, what else can we stack in with that? We can stack friendship or relationship. We can walk with someone else. We can walk while talking on the phone. Some people might even be able to do certain kinds of business meetings or coordinating on the phone while you're walking. You can do education if you're taking a class with someone and there's audio to listen to, listening to that while you're walking. There's so many different things. Chapter 5, reaching, carrying, lifting, and other functional movements. So again, like if I'm not challenging myself to reach up and grab things or pick things up off of the ground and lift them, or walk while carrying, if I'm not doing that, I will lose it. So we can figure out how to get those things into our life more often. An example here would be like, say you do live in town or in an urban area, and say that your grocery store is it's a 15 or 20-minute walk away. You can carry a backpack and get used to walking to the store and buying what can fit in your backpack, and then you're doing some carrying and some walking and getting your groceries all at once, right? So these different ways to reframe, and again, we've outsourced so much of our movement that anymore we're kind of like, ain't nobody got time for that. But if it comes down to quality of life, taking care of your body, you may be one person who wants to rethink it. I am someone who wants to rethink it, because a lot of the nose to the grind, driving here and there, volunteering for this, putting time in there, that pace doesn't work for me, for my physiology, for this body, for this nervous system. So I'm really interested in this recrafting piece. Chapter 6, Fit to Drive. I had someone who was in one of my movement classes. She had been coming for a few months, and then she stayed after on the Zoom to tell me that she noticed that the classes were working for her body, because it was easier to look behind her when she was backing up. So she had a really clear example of that. I thought that was so cool. Chapter 7, movement is part of life. So, just a great, encouraging book that helps us with everyday posture, everyday movement, how to get more movement in our life, how to age well. And the thing about this book that's also cool is she works with, I think there's 5 different older people who were her students, and their stories are kind of woven into this, and how they went from having different conditions in their body that made things hard for them to a more movement-rich life, less pain. So this book is geared for the 50-plus audience and anyone looking to improve basic whole body mobility. So you might be younger than 50, but your body's kind of broken and you're not that mobile. This is a good place to start. Includes exercises and postural adjustments that require no special equipment and include modifications for all fitness levels. Will help you move and feel better. So there you have it, 2 of my recommended books by an author who I think is just top notch. She has won my studentship. I think she's cutting edge in the field of health and wellness, and I incorporate her work and the things that I've learned from her into my movement classes, into my coaching programs, the stacking your life thing, and my coaching program, Daily Routine 101. It's a lot about that. How do we stack these different activities that we have and the different interests and our different priorities in throughout our life so that we can be efficient, create the kind of quality of life that we want, create the activities that are important to us, take care of our bodies, take care of our families' bodies. So great books. If you want a little bit more of what I'm offering, I've got this awesome mindful movement program. I also have the coaching programs that I offer, including Daily Routine 101. So many good things to help you remap your life, restack your life in a different way, but not changing too much too fast. We're all unique individuals. We all have a different set of priorities and what we want. So in that program, I really work with you and teach you how to look at what's important to you, what's your own unique style, what are the things you definitely want to keep, but then start to add things in slowly and shift and change things slowly, and taking this attitude of continual small improvements so that you are getting the level of health and wellness and exercise and attention to food and nutrition that you want. So it's an easeful approach. It's a joyful approach. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to my website, sararusticyoga.com, check that out there. And you could also reach out to me personally. I'm a really friendly gal and would love to talk to you about anything in here that